coming this week. As for the Dallas Cowboys, the question mark is going to be the offensive line. Dez Bryant had one of his worst seasons statistically at 838 yards. Will he stay or will he go? And the defense needs some help, especially in the linebacking position, and some help in that secondary. Now, the Chiefs beat the Broncos 27-24 in the NFL debut of Patrick Mahomes II. This was the quarterback selected 12th overall out of Texas Tech, given a huge opportunity, and he also engineered the game-winning drive that led to the Harrison Butker 30-yard field goal. Chiefs beat the Broncos 27-24. The Broncos, Vance Joseph is given another year, considering the season that they had, including 8 consecutive losses. As for the Kansas City Chiefs, back-to-back AFC West championships. Let's see what they can do in this stretch run coming up. They're the first team to have a 4,000-yard passer, a 1,000-yard receiver, a 1,000-yard rusher, a 1,000-yard tight end since the 81 San Diego Chargers, who went to the AFC title game that year. Now, the Packers beat the Lions 35. The Lions beat the Packers 35-11. The last game for Caldwell as the head coach, but you have to give it up to Matthew Stafford with that go-ahead 54-yard pass to Kenny Golladay. Still didn't make up for the fact that they played terribly week 16 when they needed to play their best, but yet they played their best when it didn't really count. They still beat the Packers, who, by the way, really showcased the answer to the question, are they really good without Aaron Rodgers? Well, that's a big, fat N-O right there. The Houston Texans, of course, losing to the Indianapolis Colts 22-13. Jacoby Brissett had a touchdown. Marlon Mack rushing on the ground. I think you got a good running back for the future, Marlon Mack, who is probably going to take over Frank Gore. I don't know if Frank Gore's coming back, but at the age of 34, having 1,000 yards on the ground, congratulations on the career that you've had with this team for the last few years and for the 49ers, which you'll probably be inducted as a Hall of Famer for. As for the QB situation, Andrew Luck needs shoulder surgery, possibly again. Begs the question, who is the starting quarterback next year? Is it Jacoby Brissett, or are they going to bring in somebody else? Now, as for the Texans, when Deshaun Watson comes back healthy, I think he's really going to lead this team to greatness. The Texans will be back next year. Jaguars losing to the Tennessee Titans 15-10. In fact, Titans had a 15-3 lead. Unfortunately, it was a bad transition from Marcus Mariota to Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry fumbles the ball. Yannick Ngakoue, the defensive lineman for the Jaguars, takes it for 68 yards to the house, making a 15-10 game with 10:48 to go on the clock. Jaguars couldn't do anything after that, including stopping Mariota on a key 3rd and 5 run after the 2-minute warning that the Titans used to kill the clock out. They win 15-10. Clinching a playoff berth for the first time since 2008. And the Jaguars, unfortunately, losers of the last 2 games, 5 in which Blake Bortles has thrown 5 interceptions as opposed to the previous 3 games, which they won, where Bortles had 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. Bortles is truly the Jekyll and Hyde of NFL quarterbacks. The Oakland Raiders lose to the Los Angeles Chargers 30-10. Phil Rivers, 387 yards, and 3 touchdowns on the day. But still, the Chargers miss out in the playoffs for yet another season due to that 0-4 start for the Raiders. A lot of expectation after clinching a playoff spot, and then nothing this year, unfortunately. Derek Carr was not at his best. You had too many mounting injuries, too, and the suspension as well to Michael Crabtree. Just a lot of things that went wrong in the worst possible times. The Raiders, I think, will be back in the conversation next year, but without their head coach, Jack Del Rio, who also got fired. Now we're hearing rumblings of John Gruden to be introduced this Tuesday. That name is familiar to you. He was with the Raiders organization before he was unceremoniously traded for the 2002 season. That is what I like to refer to as revenge is a dish best served cold year, in which he went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and served some revenge to the Raiders to the tune of a 38-21 victory in Super Bowl 37 that year. First time ever the Raiders won a Super Bowl. The only time they won a Super Bowl. Now the Raiders could serve John Gruden with a 10-year, $100 million deal. Unheard of. This is insane on the face of it. This is all for Las Vegas for 2020 when they moved there. And for the Chargers, I hope Phillip Rivers is there for another season. I think he worked out great. He's got a good crop of receivers and Travis Benjamin and Keenan Allen. I think things are going to be looking up for the Chargers next year. Speaking of things looking up, how about the 49ers? What a December to remember. 5 wins in 5 consecutive weeks, all because of one person, Jimmy Garoppolo, concluding with a 34-13 victory for the 49ers over the Rams. But let's not forget, the Rams were playing their B squad players. No Jared Goff, no Todd Gurley, no Aaron Donald. So a lot of the key players that led the Rams to their first division title since 2003 when they were the Rams didn't play this week. But you have to give it up for Garoppolo in the last 5 weeks and what he's done for this 49ers franchise. He's the answer to the question, who will be the franchise quarterback? He will be. He should get a contract. And not only that, the 49ers have the capital to do it. $130 million in space next season. So don't worry. Jimmy G is getting a big payday. The New York Jets end their 5-11 season with a nice 26-6 loss to the New England Patriots. Patriots, of course, with the victory, claim home field advantage throughout the AFC side of the playoffs. And Deion Lewis not only caught a touchdown pass, ran for a touchdown. New Orleans Saints, they clinched the NFC South after 3 consecutive 7-9 seasons, but they lose in the final week to the Buccaneers 31-24. Alvin Kamara did have a memorable 106-yard kickoff return for a touchdown, but the fact that they won the division because not only did they lose, but the Panthers lost, and the fact they have the head-to-head over the Panthers, they won the division. Not the way they wanted to win, but hey, at least they got the crown, and they're in the postseason. Now, the Redskins lose to the New York Giants 18-10. Aldrick Rosas had 2 short field goals, and this could have been the final game for Eli Manning in his career. Yes, he was 10 of 28, unfortunately. But we don't know if he'll be back, but at least the Giants end with a victory. 13 losses, the most ever in franchise history since they moved the schedule to 16 games. And that is all the games for the final week of the 2017 NFL season. Regular season. But that doesn't mean it's over because we're now entering the postseason phase. Let's get started. Let's get into it, folks. I'm excited. Starting on the AFC side of things for the wild card round, we have these 2 teams, these 2 combatants. The Tennessee Titans visiting the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium. It's going to take place the first game of the wild card weekend, Saturday, 4:40 on ESPN or ABC, whichever channel you want to watch it on. With, of course, I believe John Gruden, what could be his final game as a broadcaster, if the rumors are true with him going to Oakland. But nonetheless, going to this particular game right here, the Raiders are not going to have DeMarco Murray. He has an MCL tear. He's out this week. So really, the crux of the running game is going to be on the shoulders of Derrick Henry, who will get the majority of the touches, and of course Marcus Mariota, who's the second leading rusher on this, who's the other third leading rusher on the squad. That's unfair to put it on both their shoulders. Where are the rest of the receivers? Really, where are the rest of the receivers in this squad? And Eric Decker, could he be that X factor that nobody's going to take a look at that could maybe take advantage of the Chiefs? I'm sorry. All due respect to Eric Decker, that's not going to happen. I don't know how I was able to even say that with a straight face. But nonetheless, there's no way that this Titans team can just rely on Henry and Mariota to really carry this offense. Congratulations on the fact they made the postseason for the first time since 2008. But you're going up against a tough KC squad. They're not the greatest defensively, but when it comes to Marcus Mariota and company, there's not much to worry about. They don't have a great deep threat receiver to really worry about in their core. The only thing they're gonna line the box with 8 people on their defense, force Mariota to win the game with his arm, and that to me will be a recipe for disaster. And the KC team is going to run the ball heavily with Kareem Hunt down the throat of that Titans defense. And you're going to see plenty of crossing routes and unimaginable fade catches from Travis Kelce as well. And then Tyreek Hill, who may have to take over some special teams duties, which I don't think Casey would really want to do, but he's going to be that special something. Look for him to have 120 yards on the day receiving-wise on 8 catches and 2 touchdowns. I like Alex Smith and company. I like the KC Chiefs winning this game. Next AFC title game. It's a Sunday 1:00 game on CBS from Jacksonville, Florida. Everbank Field, 70,000 seats in 2 days, sold out. In fact, they had to take off the tarp, which is on the 300 level of the stadium, for the additional 3,000 seats they need to sell. Unbelievable. The first time since 1999 they are hosting a playoff game. First time since 2007 they are in the playoffs against a team that's in their first postseason, as I mentioned earlier, since 1999. That was the year, in fact, the Buffalo Sabres, lost in the Stanley Cup final to the Mike Modano-led Dallas Stars. So that was a good year for Buffalo sports in 99. At least you had 2-year teams and 2 premier sporting events. Now, as for the game itself, for the Buffalo Bills, the majority of their offense is LaShawn McCoy, who's run for over 1,000 yards on the ground. Will he be able to play? That's the question mark for Buffalo this week. And even if he is able to play, I don't know if he'll be able to be at 100%, because if he's not able to go, he takes away the ability to have teams concentrate on him, and which gives Tyrod Taylor, the quarterback for the Bills, the ability to make a lot of bootleg, play-action pass plays, especially to Kelvin Benjamin, the newly acquired receiver they got back in October. As for the Jaguars' defense, the reason why they are 10-6, winning their first ever AFC South title, is the defense. The acquisition of both A.J. Bowie in that secondary to go with Jalen Ramsey, the second-year player, genius, both combined for 10 interceptions together. Then you got Calais Campbell off the free agency market last year, has 14 sacks to go with Malik Jackson and Yannick Ngakoue, 3 10-plus sack players, a team that they're going up against a Bills team that allowed the 30th most sacks in the league, 47, against a team that had 55 sacks in the season. That should tell you right there that this Bills offensive line is not going to be able to protect. Tyrod Taylor the way he needs to be protected. Expect the defense to be the reason why they win this game, because Blake Bortles, I'll be honest, if it's down to Blake Bortles, and him throwing the ball, he is Jekyll and Hyde. 5 interceptions the last 2 weeks, throwing questionable passes. Yes, there were games in which he had 3 touchdowns during that span, but when he makes those turnovers, that hurts the Jaguars team and puts the defense in an untenable position to try and make up for its mistakes. I don't think he'll make those mistakes this week against the Bills. I expect the Jaguars to win with the defense. 2 interceptions off of Tyrod Taylor, and I think Leonard Fournette is going to have a 2-touchdown day on the ground. I'm going with the Jaguars. I'm happy for the Cinderella story for these two teams, but one of them will have the proverbial pumpkin taking place when the clock strikes midnight. Now on to the NFC side of the wild card round. Starting on Saturday night, 8:30, NBC at the Coliseum. That's right, LA Memorial Coliseum, the home of the LA Rams. First time since 1978 when they lost to the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC title game, 28-0, when their quarterback, Pat, had 2 interceptions, unfortunately, in that season. And yet Charlie Waters, and Roger Staubach that season in that particular game when he had a nice touchdown drive, they won 28-0, and the Rams were nowhere to be found in that particular game. And the last time the Rams were, before last season, they left in 1994 to be the St. Louis Rams in 95 up until 2016 when they returned to LA. It didn't go well in their first year back. They were 4-12 with Jeff Fisher. They fired him 2 weeks before the 2016 season ended. Off-season, they hire a charismatic 31-year-old offensive coordinator by the name of Sean McVay at Washington. And look what he has done to this team. He's transformed them into an 11-5 team. They won the NFC West for the first time since they were the 2003 St. Louis Rams. Todd Gurley is a potential candidate for MVP with over 2,000 all-purpose yards. Jared Goff went from a abysmal, and I mean 1,089 yards, in which he had 7 interceptions to 5 touchdowns in 2016, to 338 over 3,800 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions in 2017. And with the pickup of Robert Woods, the acquisition of Sammy Watkins, acquiring Cooper Kupp in the 2017 NFL Draft, third-round pick, out of Eastern Washington. I'm just saying these were good and the offensive line being ramped, and the defense too, hard and physical. Yeah, that LA Rams team is going to be visited by the Atlanta Falcons with the ghost of yesteryear's past, even though that made no sense of yesteryear's past. But I'm talking about last year, Super Bowl 52, 51, in which they had a 28-3 lead at the half against New England Patriots, squandered it, and lost 34-28 in the first ever overtime in Super Bowl history. The ghost of their past, they do not want that mistake being repeated again. They can talk about how they're forgetting about it and it's out of their heads. There is no way that Matt Ryan is forgetting about that game. That is burned deep into his psyche because he knows he needs to get his team back to that game to make up for last year. Otherwise, it's going to haunt him for the rest of his life, and he knows it. I know it's going to be impossible because you got a Rams squad, as I mentioned, with all those intangibles. But look at this Falcons squad. Yes, disappointing statistical season in terms of receiving touchdowns for Julio Jones, but yet another great in terms of over 1,100 yards receiving. He is a difference maker. That defense is going to have to play a lot of zone with him. And despite the fact that the Falcons run a Seahawks-style defense that Sean McVay has seen 5 times, twice with the Seahawks, twice with the 49ers, and even the Jaguars, which runs a Seahawks-style defense. This is my upset pick of the week. I know fans are going to be looking at me like I have 2, 3, maybe 5 heads. I'm going with the Atlanta Falcons in the upset this week. I think they got something cooking this week. And if they really want to win, Devonta Freeman is going to be the key to that game, running the ball against that vaunted defense of Robert Quinn and Aaron Donald and Mark Barron in that front 7. They're going to have to come up with a great plan in the offensive line to really block well, to give them some good yardage, which I think they will. Look for the Falcons to win. And to me, the best game of the week, the second and final NFC wildcard game to discuss. 2 bitter NFC South rivals, the Carolina Panthers, and visiting the New Orleans Saints in the Big Easy of New Orleans, Louisiana. As they say in New Orleans, le bon temps roule, which means let the good times roll. And the good times, they will be a-rolling this Sunday, 4:40 on Fox. This is going to be highlight game for the ages. And the reason I say that, for these two teams who had disappointing seasons last year, the Panthers especially, who didn't make the playoffs, were coming off a disastrous Super Bowl 50 year in 2015. We're looking to get back to the Super Bowl last year and unfortunately couldn't make the playoffs. The Saints team, 3 consecutive 7-9 seasons, and now they're in the playoffs. They won their division, not on their own accord, but via the Carolina Panthers' loss to the Falcons in Week 17. They already played each other twice. Here's the kicker. The Panthers have one of the best defenses in the league. Really, if you think about it. They're number 7 in total defense, only giving up 317.2 yards per game. They're the best in rushing, third best in rushing defense, only giving up less than 90 yards on the ground, but yet the 2 times in which they played the Saints during the regular season, they gave up 149 yards Week 3 and 148 back in Week 13. If this Panthers team wants to win, that's where it will come down to. How does your defense defend against the run? If you give up those kind of yards, you're guaranteed to lose for a third time in one season, which is not something that you want to be in that type of company. You look at statistically, in terms of teams that play each other twice in the regular season and once in the postseason. 13 out of the last 20 teams since 1970 AFL-NFL merger, 13 of those 20 teams have gone on to win that postseason game, which is a 65% edge. So the odds are really in the Saints' favor if you think about it. For the Saints to win, do not have Drew Brees throw the ball 40-plus times. Do the very thing that got you to this point, especially Week 3 when they defeated the Panthers. That ignited that 8-game winning streak that led to the Panthers' success on the season. And what was part of that success was an improved defense, especially Marshawn Lattimore, the rookie cornerback, and on top of which, the balanced offensive attack. When you think of Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram together on the ground and out of the backfield, they really are a sensational two-headed monster that gives Brees a lot of breathing room to be able to make those occasional play-action plays, especially to Michael Thomas or Manawani or the other receivers on the squad, and Josh Hill. I got the Saints winning this, hands down. The Panthers, they are a good team. Don't get me wrong. I like Cameron Newton. I think he's a great quarterback, and he's good to run the ground, but we cannot rely on him all the time. Jonathan Stewart, they're going to win. They have to have him play, and there has to be another receiver besides Devin Funchess, who will most likely be guarded by Marshawn Lattimore. Look out for that matchup. But overall, I got the New Orleans Saints winning this game, and that is all the wild card round games for this week, for this part of the playoffs. It's going to be fun. The teams that are off this week on the AFC side, number 1 seed being the New England Patriots, the number 2 seed being the Pittsburgh Steelers. On the NFC side, the number 1 seed being the Philadelphia Eagles, and the number 2 seeded team, the Minnesota Vikings. So that the symmetry, the 1 seeded teams are from the eastern part of the division, and the two seeded teams are the North Division teams. I just wanted to point that out. It's just really good symmetry. Now to college football. This past Monday, of course, began the college football playoffs. The 4 teams vying for the national title for the 2017 season, starting out with the Rose Bowl, or as they call it, the granddaddy of them all, from Pasadena, California. And boy, was it talk about being a granddaddy of them all. This game between the Georgia Bulldogs and led by head coach Mark Richter, the former defensive coordinator for the Alabama Crimson Tide, now the head coach the last 2 years. And, of course, the great two-headed monster running backs, Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, going up against the Oklahoma Sooners, led by the current Heisman Trophy winner and soon-to-be NFL prospect, Baker Mayfield. And, boy, it came down to the double overtime, which Sony Michel raced 27 yards, untouched for the game-winning touchdown in the second overtime, and they beat the Oklahoma Sooners 54-48. Baker Mayfield had a great performance, though. You have to give it up to him. 287 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he caught a touchdown pass himself that gave his team a 17-point lead with 6 seconds left in the first half. He did everything. He was a receiver and a quarterback. There is going to be a lot of teams foaming at the mouth for Baker Mayfield. Look out for him in the NFL. As for Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, they're going to be electric running backs as well. Congratulations to the Georgia Bulldogs. They're vying for their first title since the 1980s. So let's see if they can do it. As for the Alabama Crimson Tide, they had a very unceremonial win against the Clemson Tigers, 24-6 in the Sugar Bowl later that night from New Orleans, Louisiana. And most of the touchdowns came from the Crimson Tide defense, with 13 seconds apart in the third quarter, including Deron Payne, who picked off a wobbly pass from Kelly Bryant, who was hit as he was throwing the pass. Payne rumbles 21 yards in the return, shedding a tackler with open field. and then a 15-yard personal foul, and Alabama gets a first down at the Clemson 1. Payne re-enters the game as a running back, like the refrigerator, hauls in for a touchdown. This was just not a great performance. And what about 18 yards by Mack Wilson, an 18-yard pick six off Kelly Bryant? For the Clemson Tigers, ever since Deshaun Watson left, they got to get that quarterback for the next 4 years for this franchise, because they really do miss Deshaun badly, just like the Texans missed him during the regular season. As for the Alabama Crimson Tide, they're vying for their 6th title in 9 years. Let's see if they can do it. Alabama, Georgia. This is going to be a fun game to watch. In an all-SEC showdown, the teacher being Nick Saban, head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, versus the student, Mark Richt, former defense coordinator, now head coach for the Georgia Bulldogs. In terms of the Bulldogs defense, they don't have a great defense. It really, as you can see, they gave up 48 points in that game. While Alabama has a much better defense than Georgia. And offense wins games. Defense always, unequivocally wins championships. And that will be the same in this particular game. I'm going with the Alabama Crimson Tide to win yet another title, to add to the legacy of Nick Saban. And I think with this one, I think he ties Bear Bryant, or he eclipses Bear Bryant for the most ever in the history of the Crimson Tide organization. And that is another great name, synonymous with football. Newt Rodney, some amazing, even Vince Lombardi at one point, but really Jimmy Johnson, great head coach with the Miami Hurricanes, saying there are some great. But Nick Saban, to me, I honestly think he's the Bill Belichick of college football. He couldn't hack it in the NFL when he tried with the Miami Dolphins, but he did well in the NFL. Now, he did well in college football with Alabama, and even with LSU when he won a title with them. So he really is. He understands players. It's a pro-style offense. That's why he churns out a lot of professional football players a lot of professional football players are churned out from the NFL factory that is Alabama in Tuscaloosa. And but nothing to sneeze on Georgia, too, and what they do in Athens as well. So both teams, congratulations getting this far. As for the game this week, of course, I'm excited for the Panthers-Saints game. Wouldn't it be good for Cam Newton to win this game? Because wouldn't it be good for him? Of course it would be. With a victory, they move on to the next round. But will it happen? Honestly, it's up in the air. The only reason they win is if it's not just Cam Newton and Devin Funchess, but the rest of that receiving core has to participate in this game and be able to take down that Saints defense. And the Panthers defense is going to have to find a solution to stopping Kamara. And if you stop Kamara and Ingram and force Breeze to pass the ball more than have those two contribute, then you have the Saints by the short and curlies. But I don't foresee that taking place. But I still find it to be a very exciting game. And just to see like the Jaguars and the Rams, two teams that have had long storied franchises, teams that have been hungry for playoff appearances in years, finally get here. And to see the Coliseum sold out, 90,000 plus seats, to see Jacksonville in Everbank Field, which has been known as a joke of a stadium for many years, with a team that had 13 wins in the previous 5 seasons. I'm just saying, these are remarkable storylines. And to see Buffalo end their playoff drought. This is why I love football, because every year there's always parity. And this year, 8 of the 12 teams that are in the playoffs were not in the playoffs last year. It's another little fun fact right there. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up things this week, folks. I want to thank you all for inviting me into your living room, your bar, or wherever it is that you're watching this show. So for all the hardworking men and women at CTV, for Mr. Kenneth Graham behind the booth, I'm Eric Rosen. We'll see you here next week for the divisional round edition of the Blitz Zone here on CTV. Good night.